Good evening, everyone. We're just going to wait one more minute and let more people in before we begin. Okay, good evening, everyone. Hi, my name is Julia Wong. I am the Marketing Director for Wild Women Expeditions, and I'd want to welcome everyone tonight to our 2024 Arctic Expeditions and our 2025 sneak peek. Before we begin, I'd like to start. I would like to have a land acknowledgement, and I'd like to acknowledge that we are a Canadian company and that we are thankful for the opportunity to create, collaborate, play, and work on these lands, which are known today as Canada. From coast to coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territories of all the Inuit and Métis and First Nations people that this land is home. So again, welcome everyone. Tonight we just had a couple of housekeeping things before we start. This webinar is being recorded, so anyone who does need to drop off and or is unable to make it, they will be able to rewatch this at their own leisure after. Any questions that you may have, please enter them into the Q&A box, and we will endeavor to answer all of your questions, whether it is throughout the presentation or at the end of the presentation. And any questions that we don't get to, we will definitely email you back or give you a call with any answers that we cannot get to tonight. So to start, we will pass this over to Franny, who will talk about the panelists for the evening.
Hello. We have Megan Bailey, Director of Sales here at Wild Women, and myself, Franny Bergschneider. Hello. I work as the Program and Operations Manager here at Wild Women. And we also have Jenny Martindale, Director of Program and Operations. And we have our stellar Julianne Davies and our Adventure Specialist. That's your team at Wild Women, and we'll be hosting this webinar for you this evening. Welcome. I'll hand it over to Megan for this slide here.
Thanks, Franny. I just wanted to do a quick intro to Wild Women Expeditions. I know many people on this call have traveled with us before, but for many of you, it might be your first time, so welcome, everyone. I think that this is obvious, but always worth repeating that we are proud to be a women-founded, woman-owned, and women-led business and have been for over 30 years. We offer trips on all 7 continents, and we're focused on creating amazing experiences in wild spaces. With wild spaces shared with this community of incredible women. We have women joining us that are traveling solo, that are traveling with friends or partners, and we find this community is just so close-knit that people end up traveling together in groups time and again, or meeting a new travel buddy and traveling together time and time again. One of the most rewarding parts of our job is hearing from and seeing women overcoming challenges, like literally climbing mountains or jumping into chilly Arctic waters, which we'll talk about today, and then sharing it with the community. So everywhere we run trips around the world, we find local guides and local companies and local partners who align with our ethos of sustainability, caring about the planet, about animals, and about the communities that we visit, as well as supporting women in those communities. And that ethos is why we've partnered with Adventure Canada for our trips in the Arctic. So they are the experts in the region. They've been running trips for over 30 years, just like us. And one thing that we love about them is that their trips are not only a fun adventure, which they are, but they're also an amazing educational experience. So we get an opportunity to learn firsthand about Indigenous cultures, about Arctic wildlife, about the effects of climate change in the North. And they work really closely with the Inuit communities, both on board and while we're visiting those communities on land. So that is why we have selected them to be our partners in the North.
Awesome. Thanks, Megan. And we just wanted to show you this slide here. This is the Ocean Endeavor, and she will be your floating home and your floating community for the duration of your expedition. All expeditions leave on this vessel, and you unpack your bags and you move into your cabin, and the ship, of course, moves from place to place, and you get to explore from the ship on Zodiac different wild places that you wouldn't otherwise get to visit from any other mode of transportation. So we love using this ship. She is a small ship, a small expedition vessel, and she can take about 198 guests. So nothing too crazy. We'll still be a small group, and leaving the ship whenever we can on our expeditions to either hike or get out on the land. There are a few different options for getting out and about from the ship. And one is a Zodiac cruise. And so here you can see a Zodiac. It's a hard bottom boat with soft pontoons around the side. And so it's really the perfect craft for exploring the Arctic waters. You can really get close, maneuver in ice, and get close to the land there in this vessel. You can see that it can fit about 10 women, and this is one of our exclusive Wild Women Zodiac cruises as well. And here is a wider shot of a Zodiac cruise. So you can see that there's these two Zodiacs just in the middle around the ice there in this photo, and they're out and about on a Zodiac cruise, seeing what they can find. So here they're exploring some ice, but you can also see the beautiful landscape here. This looks like Devon Island, and you might see wildlife while you're out there, whales, seals, and of course you can see that lovely glacier in the background as well. Another option for an excursion that you will take part in is a landing. So when you go to land, and you can do a landing will take the shape of one of three formats. So the first format that we'll talk about is a landing where you'll have a perimeter. So the perimeter will consist of bear guards. You can see this lovely guide here on the left-hand side. She has her shotgun and binoculars, and she is a part of the perimeter, one of the bear guards, and she's keeping watch for wildlife. There'll be many of these bear guards stationed in a big loop or a big circle around the landing site, and you'll be able to explore self-paced within the perimeter, within the safety of the bear guards. And stationed around will be Adventure Canada staff, and they'll work to interpret the land and interpret your experience and help you with anything you might need. So there's Martha on the right reminding us of that as well. Another landing that will happen is a hike, and hikes will happen in various different difficulty levels. So there won't just be one hike that everybody's going on. There's usually about 5 options for hiking. So the ship will divide into 5 or 6 subgroups based on hike difficulty and length. So usually the fastest group is called the fast-paced chargers, and then you'll have the fast group, and then the medium fast group, the medium group, the slow group, and then there might even be a contemplative beach walking group. But we just wanted to emphasize the fact that there's lots of different options for hikes, and they'll usually list the number of kilometers or miles that the hike will be, so you can kind of self-select and know which hike is best suited to your needs. And that will happen, of course, on the ship. The other kind of landing, the third landing, will be a community visit, community or cultural visit. And so here are our women landing at a place called Sissamute. It's a lovely Greenlandic community just north of Nuuk. And we call it the artist capital of Greenland. There's lots of artists living there, creating sculptures and paintings. It's quite remarkable, and you can see the lovely colorful houses behind them. Another thing that happens at our community visits or our cultural visits are some cultural demonstrations. And so you can see here that there's a few different people for you to meet and really get to know the culture in the community and the way of life in the north there. And another excursion that you can do is kayaking. However, it's a unique voyage long program, and it has a limited space and it's available upon request. So if you did want to join the kayaking group, we recommend doing that as soon as possible. And it's not necessarily available, but it could be. And here you can see this lovely group of people. They are kayaking along a glacial face in Greenland. And it's so baffling to me because this photo looks like they're about 100 meters away from this glacier, but in reality, they're probably 3 or 4 kilometers away from this glacier. Quite crazy, the scale of the place, really. So that's an option as well, and something that you could have the chance to do is kayaking in the Arctic. And I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about the wildlife, something that's really passionate. I'm passionate about. And so here we have a lovely photo of a polar bear on ice. I think this is probably a dream come true. But it's something that you could see on an Arctic adventure. Not every itinerary that we have will be in the right habitat for viewing bears, but a lot of the ones in the Arctic, for example, you could see a polar bear. They have staff on watch all the time looking for bears, keeping their eyes peeled, so we can have the best views possible when those opportunities present themselves. Another some more Arctic wildlife here is that narwhal, so that quintessential whale of the north. It's very elusive, and this is a whale that you have good, or I don't want to say good because they're quite skittish narwhal, but your best chance for viewing narwhal would be any of the trips that would go to the Baffin Bay area. But I do have a story about narwhal. When I first started going to the Arctic, I became obsessed with narwhal. I wanted to see one so badly. And it took me about 7 years until I was on the right trip at the right time in the right place to see them. And we actually found a pod of killer whales, and our Inuit guide on board said, well, if there's killer whales here, that means narwhal are close. And so we kept watch and we found a huge pod of narwhal. My whole life I had been seeing these beluga whales, and beluga whales I would just be in the right place at the right time to see lots and lots of beluga whales. And but I had kind of cast them aside, thinking like, oh no, narwhals are the ultimate. But then I had this experience with narwhal, and I thought they're really hard to find and you don't often see the tusk. And I just was left with this huge metaphor, I think, that like the whale that I had seen for my whole life, that I had kind of thought was just like the Joe Schmo whale, was actually like the whale that I truly, really loved, because it's so playful and bright, and you can get really good views of beluga whales. So I thought that was kind of a fun metaphor for life. And another animal that's possible to see is a walrus. So here you can see a large male walrus. Yeah, I love walrus. They are, they look like sci-fi creatures, don't they? They're so large and bizarre, but they're quite remarkable. They swim to the bottom of the ocean on the benthic layer, and they actually suck they eat about 1,000 clams every day, and they suck these clams out of the shells. They have these like high piston suction mouths that they suck the clam right out of the clam shell. And a walrus has been biopsied before, and they'll biopsy the walrus, and not one iota, not one bit of clamshell is found in this walrus's stomach. It's just so amazing. They're remarkable. And they're very skittish. They don't like the wind, and they don't like they're very skittish, and they don't like loud noises. So we always have to be quiet around them, but they're just the most remarkable, bizarre animals. I love them so much. And we have this photo here. It is another whale. It's a humpback whale, but I wanted to put this here because we just talked a lot about wildlife that we could see, but it's really important to remember that we are on an expedition, and we're nothing. We always hope to see these animals, but the reality is we're on this ultimate adult scavenger hunt, and we are just out there looking to see what we can see. And it's the most exciting thing to be out there and to be keeping your eyes peeled, and then out of nowhere you'll find the most amazing sightings. So on the Zodiac or on the vessel, just try and spend as much time as you can out on the outer decks with your binoculars, looking out to see what you can see, because you never know what is around the corner. It's so exciting. It's the most exciting thing. It's like an Easter egg hunt for adults. And we also have, so we have cultural educators on board. This here is a woman named Nancy. She's a brilliant painter and a performer. So they'll often have artists on board doing different artistic programs, often on some of the days that have longer transitions between spots or between landing sites. We'll have a series of workshops that you can kind of self-select what you want to go to. So it could be learning about something specific to Arctic Canada or Greenlandic Canada. It could be something, it could be an art program or potentially a sculpture demonstration. There's just so many different wonderful workshops, and usually the Adventure Canada staff on board deliver them, and they are particular to the area and the staff that are on board at the time. There's also a wonderful, wonderful educational program on board that is intentionally curated as you go through the voyage. You'll learn different things, and information will be layered and layered, so you can expand your knowledge on Arctic Canada or in the areas that we're going. And there's a plethora of staff that the knowledge that they hold is so unique and niche that they are able to create these presentations and really deliver this educational program in a way that really enhances the arc of the voyage and the landscape and wildlife that we're seeing. You'll also have the opportunity, weather permitting, to do the polar plunge. So we always aim to offer the polar plunge on every voyage. And you can see here two women that they have been harnessed up, and they are jumping into the frigid waters of the north. And so you can see it's not frozen over. So we know that it's above 0 degrees here, but it is quite cold. I've done this, and usually the waters that we're plunging into are about 2 or 3 degrees. It's quite a jolt to the system, but once you do this, it's you feel invigorated and almost you feel squeaky clean, and you have a whole it really transforms your energy. And one thing I love doing when I when I go for a polar plunge is I jump in and then I have to, my instincts will tell me to get the heck out of this water, but I have to fight my instincts and say, Franny, no, don't get out yet. This is calm, you're safe. And I can really take a deep breath in this water and have a sort of cathartic experience. And then get out, of course. And one of the great things about this ship is that there is a hot tub. So you could go in the warm hot tub afterwards. Alrighty, now we're getting into the nitty-gritty details of these trips, and I'm gonna pass over the mic to Jenny Martindale to talk about our Heart of the Arctic trip.
Thanks, Franny. So yeah, we're just going to talk a little bit about all the different trips that we're selling in 2024 and 2025. This is the hard part. You have to decide now which one you're going to do. So the first one we'd like to present is Heart of the Arctic. We ran this last year. We had a group of women on the Heart of the Arctic last year in 2022. It did not run in 2023. It usually runs every 2 years, but we had some great news this year in that Heart of the Arctic, this specific itinerary, is going to run in 2024 and 2025. So we're currently selling 2 years in a row, which is really great. This trip, in 2024, the trip is going to begin in Iqaluit. You will start actually with a charter flight from Ottawa and head up to Iqaluit, and you will embark. You will embark in Iqaluit and head out to the bay there and up the Hudson Strait. With this trip, I really like this trip because it has a wonderful balance between exploring the natural landscapes of the Arctic. But also, I think a lot of people choose this trip because we do visit several communities as well. And one of the big highlights is visiting the community of Kingite, formerly Cape Dorset. And this is, Kingite is known, it's an art hub for Inuit art. When we go there, we'll be visiting, I think we can go to the next slide, Franny, because I think there's a demonstration, right? So this is a local artist in Kingite, and we'll visit what's called the Kanujuak Cultural Center and Print Shop. And so here is a demonstration of a local artist showing how he creates a print. And this is fascinating. This is what it's known for up in that community. And it's just so wonderful to be able to meet the artists and visit the art galleries and support the local artists, definitely. So that's definitely a highlight for this trip. Also, we also visit another small community called Kimirut on the way up in the Hudson Strait. And then on the way back down, we'll head into the Ungava Peninsula and the Ungava Bay. Oh, here's another one. I'll talk about this one first. So this is actually a beautiful landscape. Those flowers, it's just amazing. And this is just a small hike, a short hike that we took completely just right opposite Kingite. And that's the community of Kingite across the bay there. And this is a beautiful hike that we took across the bay. So yeah, I'm just going to talk a little bit more about the itinerary. We head down into Ungava Bay, and there it was wonderful. We had the opportunity to take a Zodiac cruise, and there were polar bears. So on this specific itinerary, we did have the opportunity to see polar bears on what's called Akpatok Island, which is an island with incredible bird colonies. Perched right in the middle of the Ungava Bay, and then we'll head across, we'll head across Davis Strait to Greenland. We'll take a visit in Nuuk, which is a lovely modern city in Greenland, and then we'll head up and do a fjord. We'll visit a beautiful fjord on our way to Kangerlussuaq. That's where I had my opportunity to do the polar dip, which is a lot of fun. I don't know if you could see this. It's my badge. You get a badge too. And then we'll finish up by heading into Kangerlussuaq with a charter flight back to Toronto. One thing I would just like to point out is that in 2025, this trip is actually going to be in reverse. So it will start in Greenland and it will end in Iqaluit. So right now, I think our website presents it as the opposite. So we'll just note that the 2025 itinerary is the reverse.
Great, thank you, Jenny. And I'll talk a little bit about Greenland and Arctic Canada, our High Arctic Explorer trip. So that's happening at the beginning of August, from August 3rd to 15th in 2004. And what I love about this trip is that it starts in Kangerlussuaq and it goes up the north coast to Sisimiut, and you get to stop at Ilulissat. You go across the Davis Strait and then you explore Baffin Island, and you finish in Resolute. So in Greenland, when you're going up the coast, up the northwest coast of Greenland, we stop at a really, really special place called Ilulissat. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but it's in Disco Bay, and it's actually a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So it's a large glacier that comes off the Greenlandic ice sheet and is just churning out tons and tons and tons of icebergs are calving off this glacier and filling the fjord of Ilulissat, like near Ilulissat, with ice. We call it the ice fjord. And you can see it behind this lovely woman. It's just chock full of ice there. And so you can walk along this beautiful boardwalk and out past a really newly created visitor center and hike out to the lookout point and just see this beautiful ice fjord, which is it's breathtaking and really unbelievable. You might have heard of the icebergs just off of Newfoundland, and so all those icebergs would come from this glacier here at Ilulissat. And most of the large icebergs in North America would be churned out from this glacier and be fed around the various currents, various gyres, and make their way wherever they end up in Newfoundland or wherever it may be. So really, really, really spectacular site. And they just built a new visitor center, which is one of the most beautiful buildings I've ever seen. It's created in this wonderful way where you can actually walk on the roof of it. And it's just a gorgeous building with some art exhibits and information. And moving along, in Greenland, we won't just go to Ilulissat, but hopefully we'll get to stop at some other spots as well. An option will be Sisimiut as well, which, as we mentioned, is kind of like the artist capital of Greenland. And of course, weather permitting, expedition mindset will aim to get to a spot in Greenland where we can access a landing spot and take you out and about for a hike. So here's lovely Alex just on the tundra in Greenland on a beautiful morning when we were out and about hiking on the land. And then we'll move across to Arctic Canada. I love this photo. I love Arctic Canada so, so, so much, especially Baffin Island and Devon Island. The Devon Island is just the polar desert, as we call it. So in a lot of other areas in the Arctic, you'll have these really bushy dwarf birch and dwarf willow, and here on the polar desert we don't have that. So you can see the land, you can see that there's a little bit of lichen and some moss. You can see in the distance that there is some different color variation. There will be a few different species of saxifrage, but nothing very large. It's all very micro and mini, which I love because you really have to you pull up to these beaches and you see them from afar and you think, oh gosh, there's nothing here. But then you step on the land and you really see it looks like the beginning of the earth, and you get to explore what that might have looked like. All these different lichens and all these different little flowers. And it's just amazing. The tundra is alive, even though it's the polar desert. And this is also Devon Island, and we will likely get out and about on a few Zodiac cruises. There's lots of ice up in Devon Island, and yeah, just a really lovely spot. The potential for large Arctic wildlife is there as well, such as whales or bears or walrus. And of course, on North Baffin Island, we have Mittamataluk. You might know it as Pond Inlet, and that is a really gorgeous site. They welcome us, and they have a really beautiful cultural performance to show us there. And this is one gentleman, he's participating in Arctic Games. So this one is, they just keep raising that seal, and this gentleman has to kind of jump up and touch this object with his feet. If you don't know, a lot of Arctic Games involve pain. And yeah, usually at this show, there's lots of throat singing and games, and it's a really great representation of some Inuit history and Inuit culture and lifestyle. Moving right along here, I'll pass the mic to lovely Julianne to talk about Greenland and Wild Labrador.
Okay, yeah, I'm excited to talk about this fabulous trip. So, yeah, so this is basically the lowest of the Arctic trips in terms of, I guess, is that latitude this way? So we start in Kangerlussuaq. Well, we actually start in Toronto. We all meet in Toronto, and we take a charter flight together up to Kangerlussuaq. We don't spend much time there. We go straight down to the bay. We board the Ocean Endeavour, and then we start out on the Kangerlussuaq Fjord, which is the world's largest or longest fjord, I believe. It's 160 kilometers. So I think on the majority of these trips, you get to experience that, but it's just gorgeous. You've got these giant walls. It's really, really narrow. There's still enough light in the day to just get on board and just start taking in the gorgeous scenery right off the bat. So we come out to the mouth of the fjord, and then we're going to spend a couple of days just exploring some other absolutely gorgeous fjords and glaciers along Western Greenland. And then we're going to go down to Nuuk, which is the capital of Greenland. And Franny's already touched on that. I think it's the largest community in Greenland. But yeah, so we'll spend the day just exploring, and we'll have our thing called, I believe, the Touch of Greenland, which is we'll have a lunch where you're going to be able to taste all of the different native foods that they have harvested themselves. So if you're excited to try it, you can try caribou, you can try whale, you can try all sorts of, it depends on how brave you are, but you can try all sorts of local foods. We go to visit some artisans. We'll go on a little walk to see a Norse settlement. So yeah, really awesome day there. And then from there, whereas the other trips would head up above the Arctic Circle, we cross the Arctic Circle, and we're going to go across the Davis Strait and start to make our way west and slowly south until we reach the tip of Labrador, which is called Nunatsiavut. So we're gonna land at the very top of Labrador in the Torngat National Park. So you can just see my map is actually covered on the screen here, but that's okay. So we spend a couple of days in the Torngats, which is mind-blowing scenery. It's absolutely beautiful. It's not quite as deserty, I think, as the northern areas that Franny was just referring to. It's still quite barren, but it's especially this time of year when we run this Greenland Wild Labrador trip, the colors are worth going for just alone. The color of the tundra, it's orange and yellow and bright red. And you're walking, when we get to do our shore landings, you're walking on this really tough, because it's used to living in this really harsh environment. So a really tough, but absolutely gorgeous tundra. So we get to spend each day, we basically just either get into the Zodiac in the morning to do either like Franny said, either perhaps a hike, maybe just a Zodiac cruise up there's just thousands of amazing little channels that go up these little rivers to waterfalls. We may do that. We may do a hike in the morning, come back for lunch, and we may end up doing another cruise in the afternoon. It all depends, like you say, it's an expedition, so it all depends on whatever the factors are that day in terms of weather. But yeah, the idea is to get off the boat at least once, if not twice per day. And we really got a lot of amazing exploring in the Torngat's, because I think we have at least 3 days where we're just kind of hopping down the coast. And it's really neat because you actually don't really necessarily know where you're going to end up the next morning. The expedition leader will kind of give you a little rundown the night before and let us know, what the conditions are doing and where we might be able to access the next day. And one of the coolest things is just waking up in the morning, looking out your window to a whole different stunning view. It's really, really neat. And then, yeah, so we spend those couple of days going down the Torngat's. And then we make our way, you can see on that little map there, to Hebron, which is it's got a really heavy history. It's a Inuit community that was resettled back in, I believe it was the 1940s. The community was forcefully removed down to Nain. And there's a Moravian church that's still there and a few little buildings, but it's a very, you learn a lot about Inuit history and culture on this trip. That was one of my favorite parts, but you're seeing a lot of the connection to, you're learning a lot about Inuit lives, but not necessarily just the things that the positive things. You're learning about the past and maybe some of the reclamation and the way that we're trying to address that these days. It's very, very interesting to learn about. So we spend a really amazing day learning in Hebron. And then we get to go down to Nain, which is the community where everybody was resettled to. And that was incredible. We arrived to, actually, we can move forward, sorry, on the slides, because I think there's a slide of, we forgot to move forward. Here's us hiking on that tundra. You can see some of the colors, but no matter how many photos you look at, it just doesn't do it justice until you get there and you see the colors for yourself. And yeah, absolutely spectacular hiking. And here's an example of when we're doing one of those Zodiac cruises and we're just going up, and at the end of this little channel, there was this beautiful waterfall, and you can see in the distance, some people are hiking. So that's one thing that's managed really nicely. Some people will hike while others are doing a Zodiac cruise, and then we'll switch that around in the afternoon. So you never really feel like we're all going to shore at the same time. So you really get that sense of the immensity of the landscape, and you don't ever really feel like we're all just crowding onto the same area at once. So yeah, if you go to the next slide, this is just a slide of one of the homes in Hebron. And so the community is kind of like that last slide where the buildings are all starting to kind of fall down, but they've got the church has been reclaimed, you can't go in it, but it's still standing, and there's a really beautiful plaque on the outside, and just a real homage to what has gone on there, and sort of how we're trying to make amends, I guess. So from here, yeah, we go down to Nain, and this is how we arrived. Hopefully the volume will work on this. We had 2 Inuit women trumpeting us to shore this day, which was very cool. Yeah, the volume might not work, but just a lovely way to arrive. The community open, I don't think they get a whole lot of people coming to visit, so they just opened their arms to us and took us in, and the Inuit choir sang for us that morning in the Moravian church. And then we basically just kind of broke off into our groups, and our little Wild Woman group wandered around to different artisans and to this beautiful cultural center, and just got to basically walk around and meet the locals. It was a very, very cool day. Yeah, so that was one of my favorite days. And then from there, we have another couple days where we just explore the Labrador coast. And then we do that. We stop at a couple more historical sites, some other beautiful fjords, and then we get down to the very tip of Newfoundland. This is the UNESCO Heritage Site, Lanceau Meadows. It's a 1,000-year-old Norse settlement. It's the oldest Norse settlement in North America and the first point of contact, we believe, from the Norse. And this is, we're looking at a boat that I think it was built, it's a replica, but the whole place is just absolutely fascinating. You get to walk around and learn a lot about the Norse history, and you spend a full day here, which is really cool. And then you do your last day, you go around to Eastern Newfoundland, and we go to a gorgeous park, and we do some more hiking there. And then from there, we make our way through this tiny little narrow channel into the bay in St. John's. And from there, we say our goodbyes to one another. But yeah, absolutely incredible trip. So you've just got the charter flight the one way, and then you end up in St. John's. Yeah, loved it. Awesome, awesome, awesome trip.
Wonderful. Thanks, Julianne. And Megan's going to be talking about Into the Northwest Passage.
Forgot to unmute. Thank you, Franny. Yes, Into the Northwest Passage. So on this amazing adventure, we are following in the footsteps of, sorry, I should say in the wake of the European explorers that explored this land, looking for the Northwest Passage to get through. So as you can see on the map there, our trip starts in Kangerlussuaq. Actually starts in Toronto, same with our other one, starts in Toronto with a charter flight up to Greenland. And then we head north, where we're going to do some amazing stops in Greenland, some of which Franny already mentioned. This picture here is from that ice fjord in Ilulissat, looking out over the ice fjord. It was an absolutely magical day. So we head up north and we make a few stops along in Greenland. We're there for about 4 or 5 days, and then go for some hikes with not a soul in sight as we wander the beautiful landscapes. And then we're going to head across the Davis Strait, and very similar to the hierarctic that Franny spoke about, we are heading into Pond Inlet or Mid-Medalic. We do our Canadian customs there, spend some time in Baffin Bay. And then we head north again towards Devon Island. And in this area, we explore the Talarutiep Imanga, one of Canada's newest national marine conservation areas, where, as Franny was showing that picture of those narwhal, that's that Baffin Bay where you may see narwhal. It is my dream. I'm very jealous of Franny. Got to see the unicorn of the sea, but it is one day it will come true. But you may also see beluga whales there. You may see bowhead whales there as well. So there are wildlife sightings all the time in that area. Then we head over, heading west towards Beechy Island, and we make our way south through the Kitimeat region, and we make our way through the Northwest Passage, where we finish in Kugluktuk, and we board our charter flight, and this trip finishes in Yellowknife. So I actually added a slide while you were talking. I just threw this in because, oh, maybe it's the next one. Oh, or maybe it didn't add. No, oh, it didn't add it. Sorry. I just wanted to add a picture of that ice fjord, the visitor center that you mentioned, but we'll share it afterwards. But oh no, it's not there. But I spent most of my day on deck looking for whales, which if you want to just go back to the first one there, the iceberg one there. And I was obsessed with icebergs this whole trip. I just couldn't believe how many we saw. You'd just be sitting there at dinner, having a delicious meal, and look out at these massive icebergs going by as you're watercolor painting or having dinner and watching it. It's unbelievable as you cruise past these. And also keeping an eye out for whales too, which was my real reason for being out on deck all the time. Then as Franny was saying, I think the really impressive thing on this trip is the landscape and how it changes so much. And I was really taken by the vastness of this trip. You know, as our North Americans here, when we drive across Canada or the States, and you get to see the landscapes change from beaches to prairies to deserts to woods to mountains, you really get a sense of how vast this land is and the distance that we're actually covering, which many of us often fly back and forth across these countries. And it's that same feeling when you're on this ship. It's 17 days to go from Kangerlussuaq to Kugluktuk. So in 17 days, we're taking this iconic adventure that you get the sense of the vastness of the Arctic, and you see the landscapes change as we go along, from craggy mountains with the huge icebergs and fjords to the canyons, like these ones that look almost like the Badlands in the south, and like in the south of the States, in the Southwest. And then we get to some islands that look like pancakes, basically. And then we head back in and we see more of the plants starting to get a little bit bigger again and growing. So it's a really fascinating journey to see the landscapes change as we travel along. As this was such an important route for the European explorers, this is a dream stop for the history buffs on board, and for any women joining us who are interested in the history of the region. This is where Franklin's team wintered here on Beechy Island. They wintered here in 1845, and these are the graves of 3 of Franklin's men, as well as one of the sailors from one of the search and rescue missions. Franny, feel free to interrupt if I've got my facts wrong. I'm pretty sure it was 1845. But the historians and the archaeologists on board do an amazing job at interpreting this area and explaining the history, and can get as detailed or specific as you like. But it's also just a beautiful, fascinating place to explore in this barren landscape, to go for a long walk. And we did see belugas on this day, just at that point, just around the corner. My pictures are just little white blobs in the distance, but it was really amazing to see the beluga whales there. And it was also just so fascinating to think about the explorers sailing in this area, with trying to find their different routes with no maps to go by. And I was there in August and standing on this beach in my merino wool long underwear and my cozy blue jacket with the wind howling. And I just can't imagine what it was like for them in those sailing vessels in the middle of winter in these barren landscapes. Because we got to get back on board and just in time for our tea time and have a warm drink and our scones with jam and watch the world go by. So we definitely feel privileged, but it really puts things in perspective for sure. And I also thought it especially fascinating to hear about not just the history of the explorers and the settlers, like this on the left is it was one of the Hudson Bay outposts. And so there's history there from very old RCMP stations and old Hudson Bay depots. But here on the right is also we got to learn about the history of the Inuit and the Thule people, who are the ancestors of modern day Inuit people. And this is a meat cache on the right, so where they would have had ancient homes and settings here where they were camping and living on these lands as well. So it was really fascinating to hear the history of both the settlers and the indigenous peoples of our land. And then also, of course, as everybody has said about all these amazing trips, it's really about the wildlife, the wild spaces, the open spaces, and also the communities that we get to visit. So this is an example of some throat singing that we got to see in Mitametalik, Pond Inlet, of these beautiful, mainly women sharing their throat singing. And this on the right is Martha. She was one of our Inuit educators on board, sharing her story, and she's singing with one of the local girls in Pond Inlet. And it was a really beautiful moment for us to get to see and experience that as well. That was the Northwest Passage this summer.
That's great. Thank you, Megan. I wanted to take a few moments here to talk about our 2025 expeditions. So we have a few expeditions that we're adding in 2025 that we haven't yet touched upon. And we just wanted to briefly introduce them to you, or introduce you to them. And the first one we'll talk about is out of the Northwest Passage. So Megan just briefed us on into the Northwest Passage, and the difference is that out of the Northwest Passage will start in Kugluktuk and end in Kangerlussuaq, Greenland. So you, instead of going down the northeast coast of Baffin Island, you will continue up Devon Island and make your way north to Ellesmere Island into Smith Sound. Smith Sound is this beautiful sound in between North Greenland and Ellesmere Island, and you can be on the ship in the middle of the sound or on a Zodiac, and you look to your right and there's Ellesmere Island, and you look to your left and there's Greenland, or vice versa, depending which way you're facing. But it's just amazing. Some of the most amazing ice formations I've ever seen in my life were in that spot, because it was so cold that we were watching the ocean freeze. But then, unique to anything I've ever seen before, it was like the air on top of the ice was freezing. So it formed all these really unique little crystal sculptures just on top of the ice there. Just a really amazing place, and a little bit of a different route. If you wanted to get up high and do sort of more of like an exploratory route, this could be a good one for you. So going up to Ellesmere Island and North Greenland, would be more of an exploratory route, and perhaps exploring some communities in northern Greenland, northwest Greenland. And again, that one is in September 2025, end of August and beginning of September. And this one is really great to be paired with if you wanted to do back-to-back voyages with Greenland and Wild Labrador. So our trip that Julianne was talking about, it would be a great combo. So you'd head from Kugluktuk to Kangerlussuaq, and then Kangerlussuaq down to St. John's. And this is a new one for us as well. It's called Baffin Island in Greenland, and it's August 5th to 16th, 2025. And so this is a really unique itinerary. I love it so much because you start in Iqaluit, and you'll head north to Pangertung. And I can tell you that heading into this little fjord where Pangertung is one of the most scenically beautiful experiences I've ever had. You enter, and Pangertung is a Inuit community on Baffin Island, and it's surrounded by just this amphitheater of mountains. So it's just a scenic visual beauty for your eyeballs. It's just amazing. And once you land, weather permitting, of course, you will be greeted by the community of Pangertung, and they actually have a local print shop there, and so you can explore the print shop. You can purchase something if you'd like. I got myself a beluga whale print there when I was there, and my favorite pair of earrings are from there. So it's a really lovely little community. Yeah. And so once you experience some of that, then you'll begin to head across the Davis Strait over to Ilulissat. And so we've talked about Ilulissat a few times. Again, that's the place in Disco Bay that is the UNESCO Heritage Site. So it's that ice fjord that is formed from Jakobshavn Glacier. So that Greenlandic ice sheet comes down from the ice sheet and just calves tons and tons of ice. So if you want to see that, this could be an excellent itinerary for you. And then you will head south down to Kangerlussuaq. And a beautiful thing about this trip is that it's paired wonderfully with our Heart of the Arctic trip. So you could explore Heart of the Arctic before, and then this one afterwards. Another trip is the Scotland, Faroe Islands, and Iceland, our North Atlantic saga, and I'll hand this over to Jenny to talk about.
Sure. So yeah, we're heading a bit further east, and maybe a little bit further south into the North Atlantic. This technically isn't a brand new trip that we're offering, but it is only offered every 2 years. So I had the pleasure and privilege of doing this trip this past summer. It was just an amazing experience and adventure. And so the Scotland, Faroe Island, and Iceland trip is exactly that. You would fly yourself over to Scotland and embark in Aberdeen, so in northern Scotland. And from there, you would have the opportunity to have visits on the Orkney Islands. So the Orkney Islands are a set of islands just north of Scotland, part of Scotland. And we do a couple of stops there, where we'll stop in Kirkwall and do some exploring and hiking in that area. If weather permits, again, this is all expedition. So there is a planned stop in Fair Isle for, so we don't always end up, we're not always end up able to do shore landings, but in this case, we did an amazing Zodiac excursion around Fair Isle and there was amazing bird watching around there. And then we had, this is the big attraction, I think, for this trip in particular, is the fact that we are able to visit the Faroe Islands, which is a very remote area of the North Atlantic, and but incredibly, the infrastructure there is incredible. The people are wonderful, and so we have the opportunity to do several different stops in the Faroe Islands and do some incredible hiking. As you can see, the landscape here, I think people are really attracted to the rugged, beautiful, green, volcanic landscape, to do some incredible hiking, Zodiac cruises. We were able to visit and learn about the wool making process. I'm wearing Faroe Island sweater right now. So there's opportunities to learn about the different resources that are from the islands and sort of the economic opportunities that are there. And yeah, so it's just incredible. It's just an incredible landscape and place to visit. And then we'll head over to Iceland. So we do our day at sea and head over to what's called the Westman Islands, just south of Iceland. There's 2 stops in Iceland on this trip. One would be on the Westman Islands, just south, where we'll visit the city, a city there. It was actually a very fascinating visit. Where the town back in the 70s was actually, and tragically, a volcano erupted there, and it essentially covered the lava covered half the city. So there was just an amazing, it was just the story around it, the tragedy around that, but the recovery as well, and the rebuilding of the city and the museum that we were able to see there. So that was, again, the landscape there is absolutely stunning. The volcanic landscape, of course, of Iceland. And then we disembark in Reykjavik. So for this trip, you would fly yourself to Aberdeen and fly out of Reykjavik, which both have international airports that you can land in. So I think, yeah, and then Reykjavik is essentially, there's no programming out of Reykjavik, but it's a wonderful place that you could visit and explore on your own as well. And then I think Franny's going to talk a little bit about the next new trip, that if you do want to see more of Iceland, then I'll segue over to you, Franny, to talk about the Iceland circumnavigation.
Cool, thanks, Jenny. Perfect. So here is our Iceland circumnavigation trip. You can see it's just at the beginning of July. And as Jenny mentioned, it would be a great itinerary to add on to your Scotland Faroe Island trip as well. And you can see it starts in Reykjavik and ends in Reykjavik. But the wonderful thing about exploring Iceland by ship is that you get to view the land from the ship. And so you get to sort of have not a bird's eye view, because that's above, but you get to experience the landscape in a different way. You get to kind of see it holistically. And the other really great thing about exploring it by sea and by ship is that there's lots and lots of seabird colonies here on Iceland, and most of them are on cliffs. And so if you try to access the bird colonies by land, you won't be able to really have a good visual view of them. And so the best way to see them is from the sea. And so you can really get out and about. I've been to a few really exceptional bird cliffs just in the West Fjord. So that northwest corner of Iceland. And the other beautiful thing is that you can get to places around Iceland that you can't otherwise get to by car or bus or ship. So you can really get to some really unique waterfalls, for example, or some really unique hiking spots just if you circumnavigate Iceland by ship. There will be some community visits on this expedition, and you'll access the communities. You'll disembark the ship by Zodiac, and then you'll have you can access the communities by bus tour during some of the days. But yeah, so a really, really, really great way to see Iceland. And you could also start in Reykjavik, finish in Reykjavik, and then if you wanted to kind of have your own exploratory expedition on land, you could do that afterwards as well, or before. And so why travel with us? I'm going to hand that over to Megan.
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to touch on the differences. So some of you have traveled with us on our land-based trips before, and being on the ship works a little bit differently. So being on, we're a group within a group. So as Franny said, there can be upwards of 200 travelers on board, and that's can be a mixed group. So we get couples and families and everybody joining. But how does it work with Wild Women as a group within the group is what we wanted to talk about today. And what's different than just signing up directly with Adventure Canada. So basically the way it works is at the start of the season, we chat with our friends at Adventure Canada and we hold a whole bunch of cabins just for our groups. We have lots of different categories. So we've got, if you prefer a window or a porthole or a double bed or single beds or a free solo, which we have some of. And so we hold on to all those cabins at the beginning of the season, and then we fill them up with you, our community. And that means that right from day one, you have your community to share experiences with. We all get together on day one and we get to chat about how excited we are and share what's going on as the trip goes on. So the trip that I did on the Northwest Passage, I was actually on my own. We didn't have Wild Women on that group. And I really missed sharing it with you guys, with our community. And it was really interesting. So I've traveled by myself a lot and I met a lot of people on the ship, of course, and ended up chatting with people over meals and chatting here and there. But I also spent a lot of time exploring on my own and eating with a book and sharing my experiences in my journal. And it's nice to have options, and you can definitely have alone time on a Wild Women trip as well. There's plenty of room on the ship to accommodate solo contemplation, whale watching, sitting by yourself in a little nook. But being part of a group and sharing that at the end of the day is really what makes it special. So, another question we get is it more expensive booking with us than booking with Adventure Canada? And we are pleased to say it's not. It's the exact same price. We talk to our friends at Adventure Canada all the time. So if they have a discount on, we have a discount on. And so it's the exact same price as you would get booking directly, but we're just going to add a few special features and a community of amazing women to share the experience with. So you can see these women having a fabulous meal. We will arrange, we have reserved dining tables in the dining room, which usually that is the table that's having the most fun in the entire dining room, and everybody is jealous of the fun that our women are having. And it gives us a chance to debrief and chat about what a fun day we had, or can you believe we saw that polar bear today, or that was the narwhal I'd always wanted to see, and have those conversations over a delicious meal at dinner. And then we also have our own zodiacs for cruises. So instead of joining just a group of anybody coming together, we'll have our own group of women, again, to share those experiences with. We'll also share activities like a yoga class. obviously, depending on what people have. I think we have a slide there, Franny. So depending on what people are interested in, but there is space on the ship to have yoga classes or stretching, and our hosts will arrange that. In the evenings, there's also lots of fun to be had on the ship. So one evening on the trip, we will have a variety show, and everyone's careful not to call it a talent show because talent is not required. But if you're up for a variety show, our groups of women get involved in all different kinds of ways. So we've had groups that write and sing songs together or recite a poem. This is a group from our last Greenland to Wild Labrador trip doing an interpretive dance about Northern Lights, I believe. It looks like they were having a really great time. I hear there's a video out there somewhere. I think we're going to need to find it. So lots of fun to be had in the evenings on board as well as on the land. And we also include hosts like these beautiful faces. We have Franny and Jenny who are here. You might get Julianne on a ship as well. In the middle, we have Marissa and Dimpna. So we include hosts. Like we said before, Adventure Canada is there. They provide the guides, they're providing bear guards, they have historians, they've got educators, biologists, botanists, all kinds of experts on board. And we add a Wild Women host to help facilitate our group. So she is there making sure that the group has what you need. She may be arranging the private yoga lessons. She might be inviting a special guest to dinner, organizing any private receptions. She'll be your point of contact to make sure things go smoothly. If someone falls ill, she'll be making sure that they get meals in bed. She is likely to be your cheerleader if you need a little oomph getting up that mountain. And so that's what our hosts are there to just coordinate the group and get all together. And also they're pretty fun, I have to say. I would go with any of you guys anytime. So that is our hosts bring to the table. And then the best thing about booking with us is the opportunity to meet you, our community of wild women. And we're bringing together all of these fascinating people, and our community is amazing. And that's what makes our experiences so great. So we invite all women to come with an open heart and be prepared for adventure. And our groups have an amazing time on these amazing itineraries.
Thanks, Megan. I think Julia is going to talk about this slide here.
Yeah, so just wanted to let everyone know, this is all on our website as well, but our 2024 Arctic expeditions are all currently 25% off, but that sale ends on November 25th. So if you are interested in traveling to the Arctic with us next year, you better get on that because that's going to end soon. But also, if you're interested in our 2025 Arctic expeditions, our trips are currently at 25% off early booking bonus, and that will be for a limited time. And just to remind you guys that there is limited availability for free solo cabins. So there are still some solo cabins available. So if you are interested, please contact us and we will let you know what is available. But don't delay.
Thanks, Julia. And since we were talking about the Arctic, we thought we'd go bipolar, and we'd also talk about Antarctica. So we have an early booking bonus on for Antarctica, and we have those 2 trips available. One in November 4th to 23rd. This is my favorite voyage of all time that I've ever been on. It goes to the Falkland Islands, South Georgia, and the Antarctic. So you get all 3 places. Just an amazing trip, an epic trip for wildlife. And at that time of year, you have the elephant seal wieners exploding in South Georgia, and it's the wild capital of the world pretty much. So a good trip to explore. And we also have that Crossing the Circle expedition, and that's in February, and you'll go down to cross the Antarctic Circle, which is pretty amazing. Not too many people have done that. And the great thing about exploring Antarctica in February is that it's the height of the it's the algae bloom. And what happens during the algae bloom is the krill explode. And where there's food, there's whales. So February is just the hottest month for whales in Antarctica. And so that could, if you like whales, it could be a good opportunity to explore that trip. And that early booking bonus ends on November 30th. So quite soon. But we'd like to say thanks for joining us, and we appreciate you being here, and we'd love to open up the platform for some questions.
We have one question from Jan, who wants to know if there is a photography group. So she was asking this when we were chatting about the kayaking group. Franny, can you talk to us a little bit if there is a photography group or talk about the photography program?
Yes, they do have photography guides on board, and they don't they're still determining if they are going to have a formal camera program for 2024 and 2025. So it's still, that is to be determined.
They do have we have a professional photographer on every expedition though, and everyone is so open and welcoming, and we found that they were always available to answer people's questions and would give tips along the way. And one of the lectures that was on board, or workshops I should say, was around photography. And then we also had a second workshop around iPhone tips, which our very own Marissa was guiding. And that was really helpful too for a lot of people to get to know their phones a bit better and take some of those really unique and capturing light in different ways and those types of things. So, and if you're lucky enough to travel with Julianne, she's a professional photographer who's imparting her wisdom on our trips often.
Amazing. I think sometimes too, if they break up into different hiking groups, there might be a camera specific hiking group as well, which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
One question from Tammy was that there are 4 Antarctica trips online, but we're only speaking about 2. I can talk about this quickly. So online, there are 4 Antarctica trips because our website is showing 2024 and 2025. And 2023. So we have 2 departures for Antarctica happening in November and December of this year. So those ones are still showing online. The 2 Antarctica trips that we were chatting about that's currently with the early booking bonus are for fall 2024 and 2025. So next end of calendar year next year. But we also have our South Georgia and Antarctic Peninsula, the Penguin Safari expedition also, which happens next February. So there are a lot of trips still online. We just wanted to chat about the 2024-25 season as we are talking about 2024-25, but you can still find 3 trips still for sale online to make things more confusing.
Any of that was confusing, Julianne has been on these trips and will answer your calls when you call in to get those details.
It's so true, because we've just done a really brief overview, and you might be thinking, gosh, which is the trip for me? So if you are thinking that, exactly, give us a call, please. And we can break down some more of the nitty gritty and try to get to the heart of what your travel objectives are and what itinerary might be a good fit for you.
And thank you for everybody staying with us. And we've gone over time, but you can tell it's because of how excited we are about the region and how much there is to share. So if there is anything that we missed or that you need more info on, please don't hesitate to reach out. We are all available to answer your questions.
Someone just asked quickly, is there a phone number that we can reach out to? And if we call, who should we ask to talk to?
Yes. Julianne is ready to talk to everybody, but anyone who answers the phone can help you. But Julianne right here is will probably be answering the phone. We're a very small team, and so we're happy to help you. But yeah, so if you ask for Julianne, I'd say. Yeah. But if any of us if you want to talk to any of us that have been on that specific departure, we're happy to jump on a call as well.
If you want to call me tomorrow, 1-888-993-1222. I'll be there.
And we'll send a follow-up to this webinar as well, and all of our contact info will be in there as well.
It's probably worth mentioning that to take advantage of that early booking bonus, you only have to do your deposit now. And then the rest isn't due until 120 days prior to the trip start date. So if that helps with decision making, it's yeah, because I know that or the date's coming up quite quickly in a month here. So that's something to keep in mind.
Marilyn would like to know how much is the deposit or what percentage?
It's $2,000, isn't it, for the majority of our trips? I believe it's $2,000 US to do your deposit. And then that at least gets you your spot, locks you in. You've got the discounted pricing, and then you don't have to worry about it until the 120 days prior.
Great. Thank you all for your amazing knowledge. Thank you everyone who stayed with us till the end. Any questions that you have, please feel free to reach out to Julianne. Tomorrow, as Megan said, we will be sending out an email with the recording and with our contact information, so you can call us and ask us any questions that you may have. Thank you all. Have a great night, and I'll let the panelists say good night to you all as well.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Join in.
Julia.
Night, we'll chat tomorrow.
Yeah.
Thanks, and have a great night, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.